Hello everybody, Maven here. And when Season 21 came out, I farmed the Kali encounter of Last Wish for hours and hours and hours just to get all of the patterns out of the way at the start of the season. But there was one pattern I didn't complete. And I didn't even care about completing it for months and months and months until now, and that is the Tyranny of Heaven. And I really wish that I completed this pattern sooner because this weapon is so much fun to use. With the right perk combination, it's like a legendary version of the Trinity Ghoul. Now don't get me wrong, it's tough to find a place for legendary bows in PvE. If you use a bow, it's typically going to be an exotic and for very specific purposes like stunning a champion, such as the Wish Ender or Lemonarch. If you're going to use a bow for ad clear, it's typically going to be the Trinity Ghoul. But there was never really much incentive to use a legendary bow, and I wish Bungie would give us some sort of reason to do so. But I think Tyranny of Heaven may finally be that bow. So let's talk about it. Don't forget to drop a like, and I hope you enjoy. So here are the roles on the Tyranny of Heaven, and the role that we're talking about today is Dragonfly and Incandescent, two perks that cause explosions on final blows, and we can mix them together to have one very explosive bow. So let me show you why Dragonfly is so good on this to help the ad clear. So we're going to get a kill with Incandescent first. No Dragonfly, just Incandescent. And we do about 65% of this ad's health bar that took damage from the Incandescent explosion. Now when we go and add Dragonfly to the mix, we completely obliterate that ad. We can probably do like 1.5 of that ad's health bar. And another reason why Dragonfly is so necessary is because when you just have Incandescent alone and an ad happens to die to the Incandescent Scorch, that's it. They're just dead. They're not going to cause further Incandescent explosions. Only the initial ad you kill will. But when you have Dragonfly, ads that die to the Dragonfly explosion will also create an Incandescent explosion, spreading more Scorch stacks and causing more Solar Ignitions. And that is what makes the Tyranny of Heaven one of the easiest ad clear weapons in the game to cause Solar Ignitions with. It's up there with exotics like Tommy's Matchbook and Skyburner's Oath. Now besides the Tyranny of Heaven, there are two other bows in the game that can get Incandescent, and that is the Strident Whistle as well as the brand new Pre-Astyanax 4. And some people may make the argument that because these are precision frame bows, they are better than the Tyranny of Heaven because it is a lightweight frame bow, but I will show the difference. It is really not too big of a deal. So with the Tyranny of Heaven against the trash mob, we do just over 10k to the crit, and with the precision frame bow, we do just over 11k to the crit. So it's give or take about a 10% damage difference, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. Plus the lightweight frames have a faster draw time and better reload speed and handling, and lets you run faster, so it has all those benefits going for it over the precision frames. Now I know this is not supposed to be a build video, it's supposed to be a weapon review video, but you know me, I'm the build person, so I had to just do it anyways. So I made a build to take the best advantage of the Tyranny of Heaven as I could, so we are pairing it along with the Dawn Chorus. So the Dawn Chorus greatly increases your Daybreak damage, so it's kind of like what Falling Star does for Thunder Crash or what Celestial Nighthawk does for Golden Gun. It makes Daybreak into one of the highest damage dealing supers in the entire game. It's kind of crazy, and I'd recommend giving that a try sometime. However, despite that, I am still using Wall of Radiance just because it's too good to pass up. But the real reason that we're using the Dawn Chorus is because it improves the damage that our Scorch deals, and you pair that with Ember of Ashes to apply more Scorch stacks, and it makes Incandescent hit a lot harder than it should. So I'll show a little side-by-side comparison against Carl, first without the Dawn Chorus. At the top end, our Scorch is taken for 796, and when it starts to peter out, it goes down to 273 before dissipating. But now with the Dawn Chorus equipped, we're hitting a base Scorch of 2214 per tick, hitting a bottom floor of 633 before dissipating. So the Dawn Chorus is effectively tripling our Scorch damage, making Incandescent a much stronger perk. And another benefit of the Dawn Chorus is that when your Scorch ticks for damage, you're also ticking up your melee energy. So you pair that along with Ember of Searing, which basically does the same thing. Defeating a Scorch target grants melee energy, and you just get a ton of melee energy so you can spam it over and over. Now the better melee to use is actually Incinerator Snap, because you snap at the floor in front of a target and it's enough to cause an ignition, but I'm just using Celestial Fire because it's a preference thing. Plus, it gives you easier access to proccing Ember of Torches to get Radiant. And then we got the healing nades to get Restoration, and we can extend that forever via Ember of Empyrean just by getting those solar final blows. And then for our aspects, of course, we got Icarus Dash, can't live without that. And then Touch of Flame makes our healing grenade give us Restoration ×2 to make it even stronger. And here is our mod setup. And since this isn't a build video, I'm not going to go in depth on the mod setup, but just know that we got triple Solar Surge with time dilation for a 22% damage buff, and we're getting the orbs via Solar Siphon. And here is my stat distribution, and that is basically the build. Now, some of you guys may be curious if Tyranny of Heaven is the best legendary primary incandescent weapon. And looking at all of our options, there's a lot of mediocre archetypes like slower firing auto rifles. There's pulse rifles, which are terrible in PvE, which even after the buff next season, I think they're still going to be bad. There's the precision frame bows that we talked about earlier. They don't get Dragonfly, and Dragonfly was what makes all the difference on the Tyranny of Heaven. And hand cannons are not bad after the buff they got, so they're probably the next best option. SMGs were the best option, but after sidearms got that 20% damage buff, they are definitely better. So you got things like the heliocentric QSC, which is impossible to get. And then there is also the Drang, which is a very good option. So in my honest opinion, besides the Tyranny of Heaven, the best incandescent weapons are the Drang and the Zali's Bane. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Zali's Bane is the only incandescent weapon that can pair it along with a damage perk. So the information is vague on explosive payload. It says right there, total damage is increased by 15% of the weapon's body shot damage. For crits, overall increase is roughly equal to 15% divided by the crit multiplier, and other sources online say that that's overall an 11% damage buff to the crit, 15% to the body. So it's a little bit vague, but it is a damage buff. Now, looking at the Drang's perk options, it's definitely not as good as the heliocentric, but this thing being a world drop is like impossible to get. And also it kicks like a mule. It's so hard to control this thing over the Drang. Like, I tried it out and it just doesn't feel as good as the Drang. The Drang is definitely a lot more user-friendly. So I tested out the Drang, the Zali's, and the Tyranny in Hydroponics Delta to figure out which one is the best. But just a quick tangent for those wondering why I often do testing in Hydroponics Delta, it's because the ads are very tanky, so it's a good place to test if weapons are good or not for tougher content. So for example, I'm gonna shoot a limp arrow here at a Cabal in the Conflux on Nessus, and it just completely obliterates him. And I'm gonna do the same thing in Hydroponics Delta on Neomuna, and as you can see, he's like 4 times tankier, if not more. So these are just about legend level ads. So this is why I like to do testing in this place. So I ran through this Lost Sector, like I said, with the Drang, the Zali's Bane, and the Tyranny of Heaven to figure out which one felt like the best incandescent weapon to me, which one brought the grande booms, which one set the world on fire the fastest and the easiest. And starting off with the Drang, you know, being a sidearm, it just had that raw ad killing power. Just because sidearms are the strongest primary ammo weapon type in PvE right now after that 20% damage buff they received in Season 21. But obviously it lacks range. You gotta use it sort of within about a 25-meter distance, or else you get that severe drop off and hit min damage. It's still a great weapon to use in most scenarios, but sometimes you just need a little bit more range, especially since I'm pairing this build along with a Wither Horde, which also kind of lacks that great range. So it's a little bit awkward to decide what to really pair with the Drang to remedy that range issue. Could be something like Izanagi's Burden or something like that, depending on the type of content you're doing. So anyways, that brings us to the Zali's Bane, which is a 140 RPM hand cannon, so it definitely remedies that range problem that we had. Plus it has explosive payload, which essentially grants infinite range. Plus, if you enhance explosive payload, it increases your reload speed. And like I always say, reload speed is the most important stat on an ad clear primary weapon in PvE, because you want as little downtime between the ad killing as possible. You want to stay aggressive. And explosive payload definitely makes the weapon feel pretty good. It has that stagger power. You can hip fire with it. You can shoot the ground with it. It has that collat power. And explosive payload being a damage perk definitely helps the ad clearing potential and makes it feel almost on par with the Drang in terms of damage output. So personally, I feel that it's a better incandescent weapon than the Drang is. But one thing I will give the Drang is it's definitely a quicker weapon, you know, the faster reload speed. Because the Zali's Bane being a hand cannon, you know, despite flared magwell and a reload masterwork, it's still a little bit clunky and slow. But now we come to the Tyranny of Heaven, and this is where the real grande booms are at. Now let's be real, within a 15-meter radius, it doesn't nearly stand up to the Drang's add clear potential at all, but anywhere beyond that, this thing shines. You dome one add in the head, and suddenly it feels like you're chaining impetus from the Sunshot. It just becomes a chain reaction of explosions out of nowhere. This thing is a collat machine, especially when you pair it with the Dawn Chorus. And just like I showed earlier in the breakneck clips, because of that Dragonfly causing the collatted adds to cause their own individual incandescent explosions, you spread a lot more Scorch and cause a lot more Solar Ignitions than every other incandescent weapon. So the whole fantasy of the incandescent perk is that you want to cause so much Scorch that you can cause an ignition, but the reality is that rarely happens with most incandescent weapons. But with the Tyranny of Heaven, it's fairly common because of that Dragonfly synergy with the incandescent. However, the Zali's Bane does really shine in the utility department with that explosive payload and also the runneth over origin trait. So I feel like the Tyranny of Heaven and the Zali's Bane are kind of on par with each other as the best incandescent weapons in the game. So it's really up to you to decide which one is truly the best. So feel free to let me know what you think down below in the comments, which one is better. Now, like I said in the intro, finding a situation in which you would ever use a legendary bow is extremely rare. You know, if you're going to use a bow, it's going to be to stun a champion in a season in which there is an overload bow mod, or even unstoppable bow, which has never even existed, because if you're going to use a barrier bow, clearly it's going to be the Wish Ender. So using a legendary bow in PvE is extremely rare, and the Tyranny of Heaven is the first one that I would ever say is worth using as a legendary bow. So it's the first of its kind, at least for me. And I'm really hoping that one day Bungie will be reckless enough to throw Volt Shot on a bow. That'd be a dream come true. So there you have it. As always, I'll leave a dim loadout link to this build down below in the description and the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment, because interacting with the video like that really helps out the algorithm and goes a long way. So I'd appreciate it if you interacted in some kind of way. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. Would love to have you here. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video. See you later.